Alright. Well, welcome back, guys. To the third week of the Tic-Tac-Toe Workshop. I'm gonna try to keep this one kind of quick because I know, like, obviously, since not a lot of people are here, I know it's midterm season. Um, uh, Try to keep this one a little shorter. So, I'm gonna be talking about just like a few. So Java is a object-oriented programming language, which means it supports classes and objects. And I'll explain kind of specifically what those are and how you can kind of use them to um, shorten your code and kind of do some cool stuff. But the first thing I'll explain is methods. So a method is just a piece of code that you write that you can reuse anywhere, um, just by calling it using a single line. You define a method uh, either being public or private, meaning public meaning it has unlimited scope, and private uh, having limited scope, which means if it's unlimited, it means you can call it from anywhere in your program, and private means you can only call it or use it within the same block of code um, that the method itself is inside. Um, a The methods can also return either can return any data type or object or whatever you want it to return, and it'll give you back. When you call it, it'll give you back whatever you want it to return. You can also give it a void return type, meaning it won't return anything. And voids are kind of used to update variables or to print or to do like print statements. And Methods can also take in arguments, meaning whatever you can give it variables or values, and that method will use those instead of changing each variable individually. It'll kind of use a general formula to change the arguments that you give it. And the way you call a method is first you define it. I'll show an example in a second, but you define the method and whatever you want it to do, and you can either, if you use a method on an object, you would use the variable name, the dot operator, and then whatever the method name, and then if it has any arguments. And if you don't have it, if you have it just not as a an object, just as a static kind of reusable piece of code, you don't have to use a variable name, but you would have to, um, sure, you would have to, where'd it go? Oh yeah, you would have to define this a method as static using this keyword, and that will allow you to not have to create an object to use this method. So um, from last week, I kind of just did an example turning the printing a board into a method. So um, so for now I'm gonna use the character array just of the same that we did last time of 1 through 9, and I'm gonna define that array, and I have this print board method here, and it'll basically do kind of the same as last time, but instead of rewriting this over and over every time I want to print it, I'll just call this method using this line. And since I defined this method as public, I can use it anywhere in any block of code. And static will allow me to just call the method just by the name, which is right here. And since this is just one big print statement, I don't need to return anything, so I use void. And this method will take in a character array, and whenever you define your argument in the method header, the method will use whatever name you give it in the arguments. So if I pass in printboard ARR, which is my character array, um, if you try to call ARR right here, it won't recognize it because it's turning whatever you give it into its own variable. And so when it executes, it'll just print the board with all the numbers in it. And I also have a method that will update character. So say I'm going to use the same example as last time, just changing the the character in the number 3 into a character. So I'm gonna create a variable with that index, and then creating a variable that holds a character x value. And so when I call this add character method, it will it'll take in an array, an index, and a symbol, which is what these three arguments are, and then it'll give me back a character array. So when I call this method, um, what it'll do is it'll copy over the array that it's defined up here, and it'll take in number 3, subtract it by 1, which will give me this position right here, and then change that to x, because that's a symbol that I passed it, and then it'll return the array that it has in here, and it'll make a copy of that into the variable that I have up in my main method. And so when I do the print board again, it'll give me back the x in this position. So methods are kind of the basis of classes and objects. So a class is just you can think of it as like a blueprint for creating an object. So an object is, you can kind of think of it as your own custom variable that you create, and you define. You can give it like certain variables, or you can give it methods that you want to be able to call on it. So instead of rewriting your methods in your main method, you would have a separate class structure that will have all that for you. And an object is just an instance of a class. So like I said, you can add your own variables, change them, and do whatever operations you want to do on them using methods. And usually a class will contain what's called the constructor method. So when you use this line to create a new object, which this one is going to be a class of, we'll just call it class. The class name, whatever variable name, the new keyword will create a new instance of whatever class you call right here. And the constructor method is usually this method right here, which will instantiate whatever variables to like their default values. You can also have a constructor method where you actually give it variables, and that'll actually set the variables that you have for that class. It'll actually set it to whatever you pass it. I'll show an example right now. I actually couldn't get this one to work, but the general idea is to have this dog class right here. So this is going to be separate from your main method, because your main method is going to be where you're going to call all these methods, and it'll kind of shrink down a lot of what you have to write, because most of the stuff is defined up in the class. So this dog class has when you call a dog a class, when you create an object of the class dog, it'll automatically have a variable name and age. And those, if you just call the default constructor method with no arguments, the name will be set to unknown and the age will be set to 0, just the default values. But if you pass in variables in either spot, it'll set those variables to whatever you give it. What's kind of common in like simple classes are setter and getter methods, which a setter method returns void because it doesn't return anything, and it'll take in a value that you give it, and it'll give that value to whatever private variable that the class adds. And this one as well, these two will set um, if you want to change the name or if you want to give it an actual name or an age, you pass in either a name or an age variable, either string or integer, and these methods will set those values to the dog class, the instance of the dog that you have. And then there's also similarly a getter method, which instead of changing the value, it'll take whatever the current value of these variables are and return them to you. And these ones, the get name will return a string, and get age will return an int. And the other one that's kind of common is toString, which kind of shortens if you want to kind of display all the variables that you have to kind of show all the pieces of a object that you have. You can kind of create your own toString method and kind of format it whatever way you want. So how mine would work is it would print the name of the dog is whatever number years old, and you can call this anywhere on whatever dog at any point, no matter if it actually has any changed name or age or anything. And I also have this separate variable that kind of will show that you can write your own methods to do whatever you want. So this one is bark, and it'll print directly. It won't return anything, so it's void, and it'll just directly print to the output the name, and then it'll just say loop. So everything is contained, all the methods, all the variables are contained in the dog class, and separately is going to be the main method. So up here I create a new instance of a dog, and I give it the variable name Fido. And so first, I couldn't actually get this to run, but the idea is to print this would print just the default values of the dog, which will be unknown and age. So it would use a toString and say like unknown is 0 years old. And then to change that, I would use the setter method, give it a name. It'll change the name, and then I can use the age, set age to change the age. And then next would be since the toString returns a string variable, this will be, I'm not actually sure if this is right because I couldn't get this to run properly. This may or may not be correct to format, but it should return a string. So you can actually call a method inside of a print statement. So this one, since this method returns a string, you can just directly call it inside of the print method. And so once I change these two values, it should print Fido is 5 years old. And then I have another instance that uses, I'm not sure if I actually mentioned that this one uses the default constructor method, which has no variables, and then this one uses the constructor method that'll actually set the values that you give it. So this one, it would set name to Balto and age to 2. So like I mentioned, you can actually call methods inside of a print statement. It doesn't have to return a string, it can return whatever. So this statement will print out this dog is named, and then it'll go up here and grab the name of the dog currently, which is Balto, and it'll print the name here, and then say, and he is whatever age years old, because the getter method will return an integer, which you can put inside here. And then this method calls the bark method, which is just the one that we defined up here to just print the name and saying wolf. But I actually couldn't figure out how to write. I'm not sure if my scoping is wrong, or if I didn't do the initialization right, but I'll try to figure that out and see if I can um, put it in the Discord or something, just like as a reference if you guys needed it. Um, yeah. So next I'm gonna talk about control flow, which is kind of used to kind of jump around in your code instead of running. So a normal Java program will run directly in order by from the top to bottom, and to if you wanted to avoid a certain block for for any reason, or if you wanted to backtrack to a line that you already went to, you would use things like conditionals or methods, like we explained, or things like that to kind of jump around the code. So I'm gonna do a few examples of kind of ways that you can do that. And for our purpose, we'll use it to check if a what's it called? If a line in the tic-tac-toe board is three in a row. So the simple if statement you've probably seen pretty often is very simple. You just have the if keyword and have your condition. If this returns true, it'll run this statement. And one little thing is that if you don't have the brackets here, it'll run whatever first line is right here, but it won't run anything after that. So if you have more than one line, you would want to use the brackets like I did up here. And if you have two if statements in a row, um, even if say these conditions are supposed to contradict each other, um, it'll always go through both it'll check both conditions no matter what because you're missing an else. So you can actually use this if you wanted to um, instead of checking every single individual possibility of this condition, if you wanted to check just two and make sure that it checks it every time, you don't have to have an else to match. Um, but if you wanted to check every single individual every single case of a condition and have it not check um, the other possibilities, you would have to match the if with an else. And if you wanted to create, if you start with an if you wanted to do this, you would have to match it with an else. And then if you wanted to create another if, you would use the else if keyword, which starts a new branch. And yeah, if statements are useful mostly for kind of when you know that your condition is going to be either true or false and there's no other real case. There's no like value that you have to check. And since they're mostly used to check booleans, you don't really want to have a big if chains or nested ifs because they don't really look that nice. There's other ways that you can kind of make that a little bit more streamlined. And you can also check multiple conditions in one if statement, which you can't do with some other ways. Like a switch statement, you can actually do that. Switches are used to check a value that you give it. So the switch keyword will check this conditional, and instead of checking if this is true or false, you have to define case values, which say if this variable is equal to this value, you run this statement. And similar to how the else keyword works by breaking out of the statement, break will when it gets to the break statement, it'll come out of the switch and it won't run anything else. If you don't have the break, it'll actually check this value again, which may or may not be ideal for you, so be careful with that. And then default is kind of just similar to an else with nothing to check. And as I said, this one is more desirable to check kind of all possibilities of a single condition. And the last one I'll talk about is try catch. and exceptions. So an exception you might have seen before as an error, which an exception is just an error that will happen during runtime. So let's say like some of the ones that are common is if you try to reference an array, an index an array that is out of the array's limit, or um, it'll be an index, or no, array index out of bounds, or something like that, where you try to reference memory that you don't have access to, things like that. Or if you try to check a value or something and it's not the right data type, you'll get an exception. So a um, if you know that your whatever you want to do, whatever statements you want to run, they may or may not uh, produce an exception. You can use a try catch, which is similar to a do loop, which is kind of a less common loop to use, but it kind of works similar to this, where the try keyword will make sure that every single time, no matter what, this statement will always run. And if there's no exception, then it'll skip the catch statement, because this catch will only run if an exception is thrown up here. And this will kind of this catch statement you can use to, instead of the program just crashing on you and giving you an error, you can catch the exception and then have it do something. Like, kind of what's common is just having a print statement say like this was not valid or something. And these are kind of useful to, like I said, when you know um, your program might have an exception, but you can't really there's instead of doing like an edge case thing, like saying this if this reference is bigger than a certain value in the array, you can do a try catch instead, and that'll kind of do the same thing without having to define edge cases. These ones will handle edge cases for you. And that's it for today. I actually have if um, kind of all the things that I talked about are if Aiden is there, if he wants to talk about the board class that you made, and kind of like um, really quickly like show like kind of how you use these, or like kind of what the thought process is behind the board class if you were there. No, that's cool. Oh yeah, for sure. No worries. I probably could have let you know ahead of time before putting it out on you. Sorry. But so that one is just an example of creating a class that instead of creating a game board as an array or a 2D array and creating methods for an array, what he did was create an entire class that has variables that you can set yourself, and methods that will use um, some of the control flow things that I talked about, and let's see, yeah, and then using methods and um, control flow to check certain cases that we need to do for the game. So one of them, it's in the Discord. I wonder if I could. I'm not sure, but one of them will be uh, one of them. The first method is print current state, which will, it looks like it'll print the game board, and then we have a method to check if there's any three in a row cases of the same character, And then, oh, yeah, I don't know if you wanted to kind of expand on that if you're when you're ready. But it also looks like this one uses it requires you to have a 2D array, which is it looks like the implementation that people like the most, which is I guess what we'll use to implement the game. And if anybody else has any other ways to implement either printing a board or doing certain things like checking three in a row or anything like that, if you want to do it like instead of using a whole class, you can do it just like as a method, or if you wanted to do it with doing a different data type or anything else. We're still gonna. I'll talk about next time about how we're gonna collaborate on one code base with GitHub and also a few other collaboration tools that we are gonna use. But I'll talk about that next time. Which next is it next week? I think next week is next week spring break? No, wait, it's a week after that. So um, yeah, I'll probably have like one more before spring break, and I won't have one during the break because I mean nobody wants to think about school on spring break, so we'll be back after that. Um, yeah, and then that's when I'll talk about the collaboration stuff, which I know like a lot of people are interested, and I kind of want to like take the time to kind of show a lot with that, which I know I kind of want to be useful because it's something that I didn't really learn about until like having my own research on it, and it's kind of useful for like job um, to kind of get a sense of how actual jobs work. But um, Aiden, are you good? Okay, that's fine. Um, yeah, I'll see if I can talk any more about it. But it's he actually did an entire class which handles kind of all the cases that we will need. So if anyone wants to kind of do their own version of it and kind of use that as a template or kind of go through it and go kind of look through it and see kind of the thought process behind it of um, how Aiden did it, if you wanted to do it a different way um, as well. Um, we appreciate that. And besides that, um, like I said, next time I'll talk about the collaboration stuff, and then if anybody still has uh, any anything on what was it? Any designs or any ideas of how what platform to use to implement when we get to the app portion. If anyone wants to start researching that and kind of giving ideas or any other ideas or suggestions, just throw them in the Discord as well. But yeah, besides that, that'll be it for today. And yeah, I'll see you guys next Wednesday because it's not spring break. What should we have for fun? Oh, I mean, I won't go over more like code stuff specifically until after the break. I'll try to see if maybe we can kind of get more people to show kind of their idea of what the code, how to code. I might do my own version, and then we'll kind of come together after the break and see which version we want to do. So if you wanted to if I say what should we have before the next meeting, I'd say like until after the break, just see if you want to either write a method or like write anything to have your own version of how to either um, print a board or check three in a row or check or another one is to check if the board is full, which means the game is over. Um, if you wanted to get a head start on that, that'll kind of be the idea of the next meeting after break. But yeah, and then if, like I said, anyone wants to research anything, drop whatever you have would be appreciated. So that's it. Yeah, for sure. All right, guys, I'll see you next week then. Giselle, do you want to talk about the what's it called the event thing? What was it called? ITC. I can't actually hear you. Hold on.